Hello, good afternoon. It's Graham and Stephen with another Wow Ergonomics. We're back at Wednesday, our usual slot, midday. And I don't know who's going to turn up today, Stephen, because I've actually given out the link to several different people.
Right.
And people may turn up, they may not. We'll just have to wait and see. If my LinkedIn starts pinging away, then I'll know that we've got people coming. Now, just before we came on air, I just played you this, which I thought, this was 2 minutes in GarageBand, right? It is absolutely naff, but here we go. Just for a bit of fun. There you go.
2 minutes. 2 minutes work, Graham. That's pretty impressive. I think we need to. I think you should invest an hour in it next time.
Yeah, no, next time I'll spend a little bit longer on it. But it's amazing, isn't it? I mean, the thing is, people try and nick other people's music all of the time. Just make your own. It's easy.
It's that easy.
It's that easy. Just get yourself GarageBand or something similar and just make it. I mean, why try and nick other people's music and put it on your show? And then have to worry about copyright infringement and all of that. Just make your own music. Just do it, folks. Just make your own music.
We're expecting potentially one or two people to join in purely on the back, Graham, of a couple of LinkedIn posts and comments and things that were sort of floating around yesterday. A couple of different topics, weren't there? I know we'll touch on them as we go along, but a couple of topics. One that would sort of fall into our normal bracket. Another one was a topic we discussed that we thought would be quite interesting, and hopefully we might get a couple of people join us.
Yeah, let's kick off with that big story. Which the BBC manifested yesterday. Was it yesterday or was it the day before? Can't remember. It all blurs into one at the moment. But this massive story about the fact that this think tank have decided that we are all going to go back to the office 5 days a week. And suddenly I cottoned onto it first thing in the morning yesterday. I did my poll about it because I thought there's no way that people are going to agree to this. Subsequently, I've seen poll after post after poll after post about it across LinkedIn. I must admit, if you're listening to this on Twitter, I haven't looked on Twitter at this specific subject, but do tell us if again it was picked up. But just people going, This is crazy. There's no way after everything that's happened that we haven't learned from this. Now we haven't learned. Crazy. I've got the first guest coming in, and he can talk to us about this as well. We have a young ergonomist who wants to do a little bit more in the world of ergonomics, and so he's coming to learn from us. This is Nathan. Hi, Nathan.
Good morning. Hey, well, it's good morning here. So good afternoon for you guys.
Yeah. Where are you coming from, Nathan?
I'm in Auburn, Alabama. So it's 6:03 in the morning here right now.
Wow.
You're keen.
Dedication. That is dedication to the cause.
I'm usually up by 4:30 anyhow.
Now,
gotta get that morning workout in before getting into the office.
Yeah, nice. Absolutely. It gets hot out there as well, doesn't it? I guess.
I felt like I was swimming yesterday, just trying to walk outside. Humidity.
I love that. I thought I was swimming. Yeah. That's the last thing you want to do, is it? Go for a morning run and drown. No, that's not good. So listen, tell us a little bit about yourself. You're a new ergonomist. You qualified in ergonomics?
I have just applied for make sure I get the qualification right, AEP, going for, and hopefully in the next couple of years going for the full certification. But I'm a PhD student here at Auburn. My focus is occupational injury prevention, and I'm Department of Industrial and Systems Engineering, and I do a whole range of studying between human factors, safety, and ergonomics, and the interactions between them and how they interact and relate with each other.
That's fantastic, and we need more people like you definitely out there. So, so now listen, we're discussing at this moment in time. We're discussing the fact that over here, there's been a think tank that has suddenly reared its ugly head and decided that we're all going to go back to working in an office 5 days a week, and all of this hybrid working model thing is just a fad that we've been going through, and it's never gonna, it's just going to go away. What's the kind of depth of feeling in terms of hybrid working going forward over there?
It's definitely growing. I've seen a lot of new news broadcasts for a lot of the major companies having changes of policy where they will allow for certain amounts of days of the week for people to work from home and vice versa. So I think there's going to be, at least from what I've seen, a growing trend towards that model. And it just will depend with how the market goes in that, because then that changes it changes business models from being in a facility where you have open space to more of a flex space. So you rent a particular space and you rent out individual spaces for allotments of time for work. But then again, that causes another whole host of issues. Especially with, at least in my opinion, with ergonomics, like I have a very specific setup and I have very specific things that I like to have in certain places. And those kind of flex spaces, yes, they're beneficial. However, that can cause issue in that organization for some people, and it can cause problems and make people somewhat comfortable or uncomfortable with their working space.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've discussed this before. It's a tricky one for the ergonomics community, as it has always been, because a lot of our assessment process has been around assessing someone in their predominant workspace. If you don't have a predominant workspace, but you have multiple workspaces, what do you assess? Having said that, the flip coin side of that is that we've seen far too much in the past of people sitting in one space for all day, every day, and not actually moving at all. And with flexible working comes more movement. People actually getting out, going to different spaces, maybe even working by the beach, which is good for you for lots of reasons, especially the ice cream. But
except working with the sand.
Well, that's sanding computers is an issue. Yeah, sanding computers is an issue. But the getting outside bit, the sort of being in the fresh air, moving around a bit more, actually moving between one place and another is certainly good for us for several reasons, both from a mental health perspective and from a physical perspective. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes. But are you finding, in terms of still studying these subjects, the approaches and some of the teaching is having to try and keep up to date with the fact that the landscape is changing all the time?
Yes. Excuse me. Our professors here try their best to keep up with changing things. However, there are certain ergonomics principles that at least I feel that we need to have before we can start expanding. So we have, it'll also depend on the school, but they can have different types of classes that specialize in different things, or you can have a general class that's more of a survey class and can try to cover a lot of different things in one go. And back to the flexible workspace, I've got classmates and professors who've done both. So they'll teach from being outside in a chair, and they seem to enjoy it. So they don't mind being able to come back to campus or being at home and continuing to go back and forth. Some of them do. Some professors who are a bit more old school, they prefer to be in the office, which is completely fine. But some who are more flexible. Yeah.
That's an interesting point, isn't it, Stephen? It's not just changed.
No,
kind of the general workspace. It's really changed education as well. There's been an awful lot of online learning over this period, and a lot of lecturers have actually found that some of their students have really enjoyed that, the flexibility of that online learning as well.
We've touched on it before, Graham. Yeah, Graham, we touched on it before, didn't we? We talked about geography, sort of driving where people went to study courses. And I guess it's the same, certainly with the US being on a far bigger geographical scale than we are. But, how many people have had to move hundreds, or I guess in the case of the US, thousands of miles to go and undertake courses they want to do, where the reality is, if they've got that the access to do it online, actually, do they need to move from the West Coast to the East Coast or from the North to the South? Actually, that online gives people the ability maybe to stay at home, because not everyone wants to leave. Not everyone wants to sort of move away from home to study. So maybe it will give, I think we mentioned before, potentially will it sort of reduce the number of people who drop out of courses, because actually they're able to take the course they really want, not the one that works for them geographically. So it'd be interesting to see where education goes beyond this, as to whether that actually happens. Do they stick with online training? Do they stick with hybrid? Do they insist on getting everyone back in the lab or the auditorium or whatever it would be?
There's also a flip side to that. I've seen from talking with my fellow classmates who are TAs, we've had a lot of students just in general across the campus who've really struggled with the online learning. It just depends on it really depends on the person, because I've done both. So before I went back to school for my master's and my PhD, I worked for 2 years. I was a substitute teacher, and I worked in 2 manufacturing facilities. So I've had the experience of dealing with both. And from that perspective, I can understand where they're coming from. There's a vast difference from experiencing being in the classroom face to face directly with the professor, where you can interact and ask questions, versus where, for at least with my classes, I had to watch recordings because we didn't use Zoom at the time. Even with Zoom giving that interaction choice, or Skype, or whichever method of people use, there's also the thing where people will black out screens and they'll just be in class without actually being in class.
Yeah. And also, if you're in class, you can't wear your pajamas, which I know that sounds like
out screen.
Well, which I know sounds like a flippant remark, but actually there is something to be said there, which is that a number of educators have been a little bit concerned about whether or not, that lack of routine in the day has actually been affecting people as well. The fact that you do actually have to, when you go into a physical building with someone, you actually have to get up in the morning. You actually have to get dressed, washed, etc., get ready for the day, go out for a run, whatever. You mentally and physically prepare yourself to go somewhere. And do that, and if you can just kind of like turn on the laptop screen, put a dressing gown on and sit there, it's not the same. So how engaged you are with the process compared with actually getting yourself ready, I think is a different thing as well, isn't it?
Yep. As soon as I can definitely attest to that. That was one of the hardest things for me, was getting a routine going during the bulk portions of the pandemic. So I bought a cycle bike, so I'd get up and make my home environment my work routine. So I would do the same thing like I do today. Like, I got up, I did my exercises, took care of all the getting ready, did all that, and then got to work, and I'm here. I did that at home instead. So instead, I'd just go back to my computer, and trying to separate those mind, kind of like making a mind castle, kind of or a mind map of where section things are. So here is where I sleep, here is where I can relax, here is where I work, here is where I exercise. Partialing that out helped me try to keep things somewhat in an organized fashion, at least in my mind, so I didn't completely lose track of everything.
Nathan, I'm intrigued. You're clearly in an office, and obviously it's early, so there aren't co-workers around there. But what sort of restrictions and rules have you got to follow in that location where you are around social distancing, masks, limited numbers? What rules are you having to play by for that office that you're in?
So I can't fully speak for the university because I'm just one student. However, from watching, a lot of the things that they've done has been based on CDC information. So we had a more full mask mandate virtual setting way back in when the pandemic really hit, but now we're starting to progress following with the data. And currently where we are now is for fully vaccinated. I believe all classrooms for the classrooms and medical facilities will be required masks, and I believe it's regardless of vaccination. They just require masks in the classroom because that's where most people are going to be smushed together, and the medical facilities. Other than that, it's pretty much open now. Auburn has done a fantastic job about getting people vaccinated and getting students vaccinated, helping people get vaccinated. It's been an interesting process to watch and follow.
And I can see that
when you leave
post-it notes are still okay.
Yeah. When you get up from that desk, then Nathan, do you need to apply a mask, or can you just carry on unless you're in close proximity?
I personally will wear one regardless, because I live with one roommate. As far as I know, he has not been fully vaccinated yet. So until I find that out, I'm going to continue to wear one. I'm going to continue to social distance as much as I can. All the people in my lab and in my cohort have been vaccinated, so we're a little bit more free following the guidance of the CDC to not wear them. But anytime I'm out, I go anywhere on campus, I will still continue to wear the mask because I don't want to risk, because I don't know the vaccination populace of the university. So I don't want to, even though this is summer, I still don't want to increase the risk of me having something in my nasal cavity and give it to somebody else who hasn't been vaccinated.
Yeah. Can I ask, I mean, obviously it's a very strong and emotive thing over here, and I presume it is over there as well, but are there a number of students that just will not be vaccinated and don't want to go the vaccination route over there? And
I am sure there is. There is. And I can't tell one person for than another because I'm not a doctor. I'm not a epidemiologist. All I can do, just like any other researcher, is look at the data and follow it and try to listen to the best guidance from NIH, Dr. Fauci, and the CDC as best I can, and try to make the best decision for my interactions with the people around me.
Absolutely.
Because at the end of the day, I can only take responsibility for myself.
Yeah, that's true. That is absolutely true. That's a better word never said. Nathan, thanks for joining us today. Hopefully I'll see you later this month at the Health and Wellbeing Show, and we will get you back again another time as well. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Cheers.
Thank you. Lovely chat, Nathan. There.
Nice guy. He came to our last event, didn't he, Graham? If I remember rightly. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's nice. Mentioning the event, there's yet another health and wellbeing event later on this month, 23rd, I think it is, of June. Same time, 3:45 p.m.
2 weeks today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wednesday. Yeah.
2 weeks today. 3:45 p.m. You can book tickets for that. They're free. Just go to www.abetterwayoflife online events and be able to book your free ticket for that. So there you are. There's the website down at the bottom. So I think it's interesting, this kickback against this think tank over the last few days really shows the sort of impassioned view of the populace now about wanting to be able to decide a little bit more in life how and when we work, having had that kind of freedom over the pandemic period to try home working, finding out that for some people going back to the office to meet your friends occasionally, that's great, but there's certain bits of work that are better where you can just be at home and fit in with the rest of life. And also it's quieter as well quite often, and there's less disruption. And I think as you've mentioned before as well, it's the cost of going into work. I think so many people have, and I think that's the biggest driver. I think so many people have realized that they've been spending half their life in a car or a train or a bus or something, and what's the point of that? You know,
you just can't see people going back to it, can you? Really, after what's gone on, they've got so used to losing that 2 or 3 hour commute a day, gaining a whole load of their life back, taking up new hobbies and interests. They're not going to go and just give that up instantly, are they? So it's yeah, I mean, it's interesting when you see who did that article. There was, I think I commented, it was very much a lot of sort of self-interest, wasn't it, really? You know, an organisation that looks after the cities, so therefore they want people in there. But just because they want people in there doesn't mean it's going to happen.
No, absolutely not. We may come back to this subject because it's a big subject, and it depends who joins us because we never know. We've given some stuff out there and to some links out there to people, and we may be joined. So let's move on to your other subject that you wanted to talk about today.
Yeah.
Go
this
for
is
it.
one was yeah, I was going to say it's not a topic that would sort of normally fit into our arena, but it was an article yesterday around people not turning up for bookings at restaurants, and again that provoked quite a lot of chat on LinkedIn, didn't it? I think it was an article I put on, and a lot of people sort of commented. And again, it all started from an article where there was someone who said over the weekend they had over 100 people didn't turn up at their restaurant. Which is staggering numbers, really, isn't it? And after all the, the pressure and hoo-ha about people wanting to get out and getting, going and dining, again, people not turning up, it sort of flies in the face of what people were looking to do. So again, it did provoke quite a lot of interest, didn't it?
It certainly did. Certainly did. I mean, I had an idea about this, right?
Okay.
Yeah, and my idea was that all restaurants should take a deposit, but it's non-returnable, right? And then at the last minute, if those people don't turn up, that booking, that space, especially, and this would work particularly well in sort of an inner city area, that booking space gets put back online, and people can take it. And if they then turn up, they get that money off of their meal. And it's just a great idea. And I'm now going to be shot down in flames for coming up with that idea. But I just, at the end of the day, look, it's everybody's got to earn a living, haven't they? And it's a rotten thing to do to anybody, is just to go, well, do you know what? Actually, I can just make a reservation there, effectively promising that organisation or that restaurant, some money, and then at the last minute decide, well, no, I can't be bothered. I'm not going to do that anymore.
And if you applied it to other professions, the sort of things that you do and I do, you'd be sort of up in arms, wouldn't you? Really, if people were acting that way, why is it sort of, why do people sort of feel it's acceptable to do that?
It's crazy. I always think in any business, you need to ask yourself the question: if the tables were turned, and this was my business, and it was, this was my industry, would I want to be treated in that way? And if the answer is no, then you shouldn't be doing it to somebody else. But it's interesting. It sounds like someone's getting ready for dinner there, by the way. In the background, don't know what that noise is. It's interesting that there are certain professions where people seem to think that they can, pay, choose to pay very little or not pay at all, and it's absolutely fine. Whereas other things, it seems almost acceptable that accepted that you're going to have to pay for it. I don't see what you look at it, Graham.
The way technology's moved on with contactless payment and apps, there must be an easy way of doing this. It's not exactly rocket science. And let's be honest, if someone asked me to do it, I think it'd be perfectly acceptable. It's you try and draw parallels with other industries, and you sort of apply it and go, actually, you'd be crazy to run your business that way. Maybe there's an element you've got to look at the sort of the restaurateurs and those sort of people and say, actually, they need to get a little bit smarter and actually get that in place, because yes, there's a responsibility absolutely on the shoulders of the people making the booking, but equally the people running the business, they should be looking at it and going, right, we need to make sure we guarantee that income. we need to make sure that we're doing this, that, and the other. And as I say, if you applied it to other businesses, you wouldn't, for yourself, I'm sure you wouldn't take on a huge amount of work and complete the work without some sort of, guarantee in the background, would you? So therefore, people maybe need to start looking at it. But I was just staggered that people would actually, you hear the old stories about people paying for, having a curry late at night and doing a runner and things like that, and it's wrong. But I didn't, you always thought it was anecdotal. I didn't realize it was on the scale. As I say, this lady was quoting her establishment that had over 100 people didn't turn up over a bank holiday weekend. So,
that's crazy. It's crazy. Here's another one. Maybe a solution, perhaps better than the first one that I came up with, is so you put your deposit down, and then that deposit stays with you until you go to that restaurant, and you've got maybe sort of a month, 2 months or whatever in order to use that deposit.
Yeah.
So if you don't turn up that time, it stays in the banks, the coffers of that restaurant, and you can use that deposit up to a month. At least they've got a little bit of money then.
It'd be interesting. I know it's, we sort of you put a shout out to one or two people who comment on this. It'd be great if one or two people joined in from that industry to understand their thoughts on it, really, because, it's very easy, I guess, outsiders like us, reading an article and some headlines and commenting. But it'd be interesting to get into the minutiae as to, if it was as easy as me and you are saying, why is it not being done before? It'd be interesting to get a bit more of an understanding on that.
Interestingly, on the same topic lines, have you been out to eat recently? Have you been to a restaurant or anything lately?
Yeah, we were away last week in Devon, so we ate out 4 times, 4 evenings we ate out. One restaurant he wasn't taking any bookings. It was literally first come, first served. If you rocked up and there was a space, you got a seat. If there wasn't, you waited. There was no booking, which I guess the good thing from that angle is that it meant people making bookings weren't turning up. You weren't out of pocket. The downside, of course, is that it wasn't always easy to get in there. If you timed it wrong, you could just be 10 minutes difference. You could miss the table because the people in front have taken it, or you may have a long wait. His attitude was, I wasn't taking bookings, and that was the way he was running it. Which you can see pluses and minuses for both ways. Somewhere else was exactly the same. So one place we went there 3 times, another time they again were operating a similar system that they were taking bookings, but actually I think they were taking bookings inside but not outside. So again, different establishments applying different rules. So depending on where you wanted to eat, or actually, no, we're not taking any bookings. And I guess it guarantees you get full by not taking the bookings, because once you're full, you're full. But actually, if you're looking from a customer perspective, you could end up driving around all night not finding anywhere because everywhere was full at that moment in time. So, as I say, it's a messy one, isn't it? Really.
We went out a few weeks ago. We couldn't actually get into the first place that we wanted to go to, but we got into the second place. I really enjoyed it. I really, really enjoyed it. And one of the reasons I really enjoyed it was there's less people there. I actually quite enjoy eating out at the moment, because sometimes when you go out, previous to the pandemic, etc., sometimes when you go out to somewhere, if it's absolutely heaving, it's almost, there's too many people there in a space, and it's almost, you can't hear yourself talk, which is so I really enjoyed the fact that you can actually sit there and have a conversation, etc. But yeah, I just think, we didn't have eat out to help out this time, did we?
No.
Well, I wonder why that was. I do think a lot of people contributed that eat out to help out to the fact that the COVID numbers went rapidly up the spike again. Whether it was that or something else, don't know. But clearly, as a campaign, etc., that wasn't going to be used again this time around.
The one conundrum we came across, Graham, was that Obviously being in Devon, and you being in Somerset will know this in some of the more rural areas, that mobile signal can be slightly iffy, shall we say. So the one place we went for the one night, you had to order through the app. But of course, if you've got pretty much, 4G, forget it, 1 bar of 3G, and you've got to download the app and process it and pay it. I mean, again, we're going into a different subject around ensuring the broadband is improved in the more rural areas. But actually, if that's the way it's going to go, it almost highlights the fact that actually there needs to be more investment in broadband, because it's a great way of ordering, no issue with it. The problem is if you've got no signal, what are you meant to do? And there was our friends who were with us managed to do it, but it was just their provider had such a poor signal, they couldn't download the app and it was causing problems. So again, is that something else that needs to be considered in this whole rolling out of broadband? Is actually is looking at the tourist areas, is actually really focusing on those areas that may be more sparsely populated. But actually, as we're approaching the summer when those areas will be very busy, if that's the way you've got to order, it's not exactly customer friendly, is it? Will it impact those businesses potentially as people go, well, I can't get a signal, so we'll have to go somewhere else?
Well, not everybody's got a smartphone or knows how to use a smartphone either. So I mean, it's fairly limiting, isn't it? It's and actually, I was hoping that we might have got someone in from the sort of inclusion and diversity side of things to talk about that first story as well. But again, it's not overly inclusive, but you have to be a little bit careful with all of these things with technologies in doing that. I mean, if that's the case, if that's the way it's got to be done, why not create a wipeable booth or something that I don't know what are they trying to do there to stop what?
Well, I guess stopping someone coming and standing next to your table, I guess.
Yeah.
Potentially, I mean, for the benefit of not only for the staff but also for the visitors, that potentially there's minimizing that interaction, I guess.
There you go. Let's make it more like McDonald's. Then you just put like a speaker on on the table itself, and someone stands a little way back with a headset on and an iPad and goes, "Can I take your order, please? Table 6." There you go.
Yeah.
See, genius. Right, and that's great, and you could even have a hearing loop with that as well. So if someone was, part of partial hearing, they'd be able to hear you.
But you know what? I'd never thought it from an inclusion perspective. I guess the naivety of me of just saying, assuming everyone's got a smartphone, but actually there will be an element of the population. You would expect the vast majority of those people to be in the sort of the 65 plus arena. But again, what if you turn up the restaurant? What's the alternative? And I know we had we touched on inclusion, didn't we, the other week when we got involved in that subject? But again, is that sort of locking people out of certain areas? Has that process really been thought through by the people who are implementing it? I know we had Jodie Greer on, didn't we? Jodie spoke around the whole inclusion piece. Is that wrong, that the only way you can place an order is through an app at a restaurant?
Well, it is, and actually, I mean, my mum, for example, she's got a smartphone, but she can't use it. She says to me she can't use it at all. She doesn't download a single app onto it. She doesn't know how that works. I tried to tell her, tried to explain it to her, but she doesn't want to know. That's it. She's. I don't know whether it's the.
Oh,
you set the alarm off now. I've obviously said the wrong thing about my mother. No, it's the neighbour's car, so not much I can do about that.
No.
But yeah, she doesn't know how to interact with that kind of phone, so she wouldn't use that kind of technology. She would not use that restaurant because of that, and that's the whole point. There will be a group of people that. You can't make assumptions is the thing that you should learn from that kind of inclusion piece. And again, actually, we'll come back to it in a minute, but again, someone else that picked up on that first story about going back to the office was really kind of honing in on the inclusion piece and saying, look, there's been so many wins for people with disabilities, etc., from being able to work from home and have that choice about how they work. Are we really going to lose all that again and just decide to go back to the office? It's just wrong. It's just There's been some, overall there's been some, deaths alone, job losses. The whole thing with COVID's been, pretty much a disaster. However, like in anything, there are always wins, aren't there? And I think that it's a number of things. I think that person who commented was referring to the benefits that have been gained by people who maybe have who maybe found going to the office every day was a difficult, wasn't a straightforward process. Those people have gained from all of this, haven't they? We can't just rip up all those gains and throw them out. Actually, you need to sort of hang on to the gains you've got and maybe adjust it for everyone else. But yeah, that would just be absolutely crazy if that was to take place. Now, I've got to give a mention to Robert Hicks.
Okay.
And Robert, I saw this article that he did on LinkedIn yesterday, and I thought, well, this is fantastic. And he's produced this chart as well, which is a free chart. If anyone's on LinkedIn and they're listening or watching this, please do go and check out Robert Hicks's posts. He's Group HR Director at Reward Gateway. And he starts off by saying, look, we've heard a lot of talk about hybrid and flexible working. But he said a lot of people are wondering whether their job is a home job or an office job. And he said, he goes on to say that, with regards to flexibility and the options, it's quite difficult for a lot of employees and managers to decide where it's best for their teams to work or how it's best for their teams to work and work modes, etc. So they've created this chart, which is to help people work out the best suggested work mode for your action.
Okay.
And what the best solution is. Right. So, and within that, he goes on to say that the key is not to think about 9 to 5 hours, but what it is you're doing. Right. It's really good. So he's got like recommended home modes and then recommended office modes. And within those, I'm just going to read out the sort of titles across the top. Within the recommended home modes, he's got retreat, plugged in, and one-to-one. So that's great, isn't it? Yeah. And then and it says, within retreat, it says, I feel recharged, or within plugged in, it's I feel accomplished, or I feel supported. Yeah. And then it goes into, and then how you can do those things and then the support value of those. And then within the office modes, he's got meeting little, meeting large, buzzing, briefing, and fun, basically, at the end of it. I just thought it was a really, really clever piece, trying to get people to think more about work from a point of view of how you do that work, what it is that you're doing, what you're trying to get out of it, and then thinking about where you should be doing it and how you should be doing it, as opposed to, thinking this is about, I've got to be here.
Yeah.
And then trying to fit whatever it is you're doing into where you are. Think about what it is you're trying to do first, the type of work you're trying to do first, what you're trying to get out of that work, and then think about what's the best space to be doing it in.
Well, I mean, work's an activity, not a place, ultimately, isn't it?
Isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, our CEO, John Van Hoof's just done a video, about sort of 3.5-4 minute video on YouTube where he's talking about our thoughts his thoughts and our thoughts as a business around hybrid working. And that's one of the things. Think of it as an activity and not a place. And it was interesting, obviously there was I think it was over the weekend or back end of last week. I think Tim Cook from Apple was talking about getting people back into the office. And within 24 hours, you already had pushback, didn't you, really? People tried you need to be back, you need to be back. But yes, but for the right activities, I know it's well documented, but, the collaboration piece, team building piece, yeah, absolutely. But if you, as part of your job, you have a very heavy, whether it's whether it's some inputting or some administrative work, or it's putting together a deck of slides, PowerPoint, whatever it would be. Why do you need to be in the office to do that? When they were talking about 3 days and then 2 days if it's signed off and 2 days, and I'm thinking, but you're missing the point already. You're already putting rules in. So if I've got to be in the office 3 days a week, but what if I've only got 1 day's worth of work that week that needs collaboration and creativity and input? So I'm going to go for the other 2 days to do administrative work that I could do at home. It doesn't make any sense to start. Once you start putting numbers around it, there's nothing wrong with a framework. But if you start saying it's got to be 3 days, so you're dragging people in, making them travel unnecessarily for activity that actually is better suited in one of their alternatives. And the fact that people instantly sort of, started kicking off and pushing back, it's obvious. I think it'll be one that's going to be employee driven, Graham, than employer driven. I think if employers try and drive this with quotas and numbers, like we've said before, you're going to start getting a talent, the talent pool is going to diminish within these businesses. Talent's going to walk out the door. It's those businesses who are quite savvy and listen and truly are flexible who are the ones who will retain their good staff and gain new staff.
I'm going to play devil's advocate for a minute and
Okay.
just say, we saw yesterday somebody saying, and I won't say who, but we saw somebody saying that they want to get back to the office because they're lonely at home.
Okay.
And I can kind of understand that.
Yeah.
If you, especially if you're a single person, you don't actually have anybody at home other than your cat or whatever, and you've just spent the last however long with your cat.
Yeah.
The conversation might be a bit dull. But is there an argument there that's going to say, well, employers are actually going to start looking for people that fit a criteria that if I want my office full of people, I'm going to actually, regardless of what I ask them at interview, but I'm going to try and get young single people that don't have families. I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand that.
That's a legal minefield.
Yeah,
but and they shouldn't do. But at the end of the day, I
can understand why and there are people in those situations, and absolutely, that might be right. But I would still question: do they want to really go in 5 days a week? I think they want the flexibility. If they want to do that, they can go and do it. But equally, they want the flexibility that, do I need to travel for 2 or 3 hours a day to complete part of my work that does not need me to be in that location? So I think that's the beauty of the word flexibility. If someone wants to do it, let them do it. But that should be their choice if they want to go and do that. But
well, you do question as well. You do question, and again, we're perhaps got to be careful here because I'm trying to make this cerebral connections here without necessarily getting it politically correct. But is that person living in the right place as well? If
possibly
if you need to go into an office space in order to have your social interaction, are you in the right job, or should you be in a job where actually more of it is all about teamwork and you have to work as a team, and maybe maybe you should be doing something outside where you actively all have to work together all the time? Just saying that may be the case. Or are you actually living in the wrong place as well? Is it that the fact that where you live there's no kind of social interaction, or there's no people of your age or whatever, and actually then when you travel into work, that's where you meet people of a similar age, and you're integrated into part of a team with people of a similar age, and therefore that's your social life. Your social life is part of your work. You know, just saying. I mean, it's who knows that. I think there's a lot of unanswered questions there.
It isn't always the obvious sort of pressure point that's the problem, as you say. That's a great one. That always reminds me of the story you told me, Graham, about the assessment you did, and it was the McDonald's thing with, it's the assumption is that it's one thing, but the reality is it's something else, as you say. Are they living in the wrong place? Do they need to move nearer to family and friends or whatever? Actually, it's not the job and where they're working, it's actually the circumstances outside of that. So I think again, it's something worth considering. That's why it's very difficult to answer. This is why flexible's needed, because no one answer fits all. Everyone's going to have their own personal circumstances that they want to build their work around.
Yeah, and with that as well, is it just that maybe businesses just own the wrong buildings as well now? If we need to move towards flexible, perhaps you just own too much real estate. Perhaps your building is just too big. Maybe for those that need to go into an office space, provide an office space.
Yeah,
right. For those that need to go into there less often, make a space available for when they do need to come in, and then maybe just rethink the whole thing and go, well, actually, this space is just too big for how we used to use it. We could probably reduce this by a third, and then it works. We've cut some of our overhead there. We're still accommodating the people that want to come into the office, and we'll accommodate the people that don't want to come into the office after. That's to get true flexibility working. I think businesses have to go through all of these processes, and try and understand it's a tricky conversation, but try and understand, like we have just tried to, what are the affecting factors? Have those conversations with members of staff. Is this about work, or is this about where you're commuting from? Is this about what kind of life? I mean, how many companies actually ask their staff what kind of life they actually have outside of work? And perhaps that's a dialogue, and that's perhaps that's a dialogue that we just need to start having a little bit more. I mean,
it makes you start thinking, Graham. I wonder if with whole flexible thing, I wonder if employers will then want to go, and obviously you've got social distancing and all that sort of thing, but I wonder if employers will want to go and look at, let's say, for example, it's a flex job. They're going to have some time at home, some time in the office. I wonder if employers will want to go out and look at where their employees working at home. What's their setup? I don't mean in terms of accessories and all that. Put that to one side. What I mean is, will they actually go and look at their place of work? Look at the lighting. Have they got noisy neighbours? Is there a baby screaming upstairs, and they might be concerned about whether that will allow that person to concentrate. I wonder if people will start looking at that into, like, almost following on from your point about what's their life like outside of work. Will there just be a general review of, do they have the right type of setup at home? When making a decision about whether they take that person on, if there's two candidates, who do they feel has got the most appropriate home setup for that job?
Well, do you know what? It kind of reminds me of the story of Bourneville. Right, if you think back to Cadbury's and Bourneville was actually, as a place, was actually born out of the fact that Cadbury wanted better living conditions for their workers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, and they went to look at, how are our workers living, and oh my goodness, can't have this. Yeah. We've actually got to up the state. Maybe businesses need to do this a bit more. Mm-hmm. Maybe businesses do need to actually care about their staff outside of this, because, and getting back to our earlier conversation about making assumptions, stop making assumptions all the time.
Yeah.
Stop making assumptions that just because you're paying someone a reasonable wage, that they've got everything else in life sorted out. Mm-hmm. Because people come to work with their different circumstances and their different history as well. Someone could come to you to work for you in business, but already be 20 grand in debt. You know, someone could come to work for you before, but you know they've been through a broken relationship or something, and actually, you know, they're living in a smaller property because they're paying off whatever over here. You know, you can't necessarily say, well, yeah, that's a good wage that I'm giving you, therefore your standard of living must be this, and therefore you must be living in a reason that you should be able to work from home because of what I'm paying you. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
If that was the case, you know, you wouldn't need bank managers, would you? If that was the case, you just go, oh right, oh you're earning so much, you're fine. You're fine for a mortgage. You know, there's no other circumstances that we need to take consideration of. It's just literally what you're earning. Oh, that's not a bad amount. It's daft. It's daft. They are. Get on my high horse, but you know, I think it's important. I think really, if we're really interested in people's health and well-being, and if employers are really interested in their staff's health and well-being, then surely they've got to get to know their staff a little bit better on a more personal level. And as part of that, it should be done in the right way. It's not about prying into people's personal lives per se, but it's about making sure that the proper support is there. And as you say, you know, just making sure that the space is available. You know, there are some businesses that actually do home working assessments. Very few, very, very few. But there are some that do it. I have to say, there are even fewer that do it properly, whereby they actually measure out the space as well and see how much room you've actually got available for working. They actually look at the lighting to see whether the lighting's suitable. They actually look at the sound to see whether, you know, the acoustics, to see whether or not it's suitable from that point of view. They actually do pat testing to see whether all of your electric, because you know they should do, because if you're using all computers from work and whatever and all of that equipment in your home, you need to make sure that it's not plugged into something with wires hanging out.
I mean, you know, ultimately, if you're involving your home more in your work, then you would think that your employer will therefore naturally want to know more about your home. Not all the ins and outs and everything, but just trying to understand, okay, what's the setup? What's it look like? Is this conducive for a good, you know, is it conducive for you to be sat here 3 days a week? You know, if there's a baby upstairs screaming or there's a dog upstairs barking all day, you know, an employer is going to turn around and go, that's not exactly the great, you know, is that going to create mistakes? Is the quality of your work going to be as good? Because if it was in the office, it's more of a controlled environment. Yes, you're at home and yes, you're not commuting. However, you know, is it a good location for the work to be undertaken that you are being paid for?
No, absolutely. Well, listen, I think we've cracked this one today. I think it's been an absolutely fantastic conversation on, you know, born out of this this article that the BBC go. I'm just going to leave you with this. In the poll that I did based on this, I'm just going to give you the up-to-date results of this so that we can see where we are with this. But basically, I asked people, you know, is this what they want? Is this what they want? Do they want to return to the office, or do they want hybrid working to stay? And the results were these. Here we go.
When did you launch this, Graham? Was this yesterday morning?
No, this was oh yeah, well, it may have been. Yeah, this was yesterday morning. So there's still 6 days left to vote on this. If you go to my profile on LinkedIn, if you're on LinkedIn, if you're on Twitter, you can come over to the dark side for 5 minutes. So it said that in 3 years' time, do you think those who work in inner city offices will be back there for good? 20% said yes. 3% said they don't know. 76% so far have said no, hybrid will continue. I think that says it all.
Case closed, Your Honour.
76% of people. It'll be interesting to see where that ends up. It's undoubtedly going to end up at over 1,000 votes. That's a good cross section of society. If out of 1,000 people, 76% still by the end of it, and we'll come back to it next week to give you the final result. But if 76% of over 1,000 people are saying no, we want hybrid working, it's gonna continue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, folks, if you think that we're all going back to the offices. Landlords, you're just going to have to get creative.
Yeah,
I think there's nothing else for it, and all of that support infrastructure that maybe has been around city centre, large buildings, etc., coffee shops, all of that. Some of it will disappear, unfortunately, and some of it, again, you're going to have to get inventive. You're going to have to move where you are.
Well, we said, Graham, didn't we? I think we spoke 2 or 3 weeks ago, and and one of the coffee shops was trialing setting themselves up in Tesco's, wasn't it? Because they thought people would be working from home and would like those. So will you just see a big movement of those establishments from inside the city out to the retail parks where people want to get out of the house and meet but don't want to drive to the office? So as you say, people have got to get creative, haven't they, with where their business premises are?
Stuff moves on. Anyway, thank you very much, Stephen, for joining me again. If you're watching this back over the coming days, etc., and you think, gosh, those guys are talking a load of rubbish, or that's fantastic what they're saying, but I've definitely got an opinion on this, please do comment. We will bring your comments to the table next time. If you're listening on Spotify, don't comment because no one's listening, but hope you've enjoyed it anyway. All right, so but until now, this time next week, take care. Bye for now.